We're going to call our meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. Have our invocation by Pastor Ron Smith of First Baptist in Palaca, and our Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Turner. All rise if you're able to do so.
Let's bow together. Our Lord and our God, creator of heaven and earth, the giver of all good things, we bow our heads and still our hearts just for a moment to acknowledge you. Lord, in light of your goodness, your grace, and your mercy, we recognize the times in which we live can be challenging and difficult. And so, Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to gather, to contemplate the times in which we live and the decisions that need to be made. Given the complexity of our times, Lord, we do just ask that you would give a wisdom that can only come from you to these. We thank you for them, for they've submitted themselves to public servitude, to serving us, their neighbors and their friends. So, Lord, we do just lift them up to you, them, their families, their households. Lord, we ask your blessing and your protection upon them. But again, Father, we ask a wisdom that doesn't belong to any of us, but is from you, Father, as we make decisions that affect one another. So, Lord God, I do just pray that you would just bless this time, that you would fill this room, fill our hearts with your peace, and this room with your spirit, Father God, and that the ultimate end of this time would be that your will would be accomplished, that you would receive the glory that you are so deserving of. So, Lord Jesus, we ask all of these things in the name of and for the sake of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Smith. We appreciate that. And thank you, Commissioner Turner. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes as posted in the agenda.
I move approval of the minutes.
Proper motion by Commissioner Pickens, proper second by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. We are going to recess for 1 minute. We're going to reconvene our Board of County Commission meeting, and we're going to recess the Board of County Commissioning meeting, go right into our Port Authority. And Commissioners, the first item of business is the minutes of approval as stated in the agenda.
So moved.
For
Second.
motion by Commissioner Turner,
Second.
second by Commissioner Rawls. Any further discussion on the minutes and the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Is there any public comment on Port Authority items at this time? Only Port Authority? And seeing no public comments on Port Authority items, general discussions on Port Authority?
I got some questions.
Okay, Mr.
guess.
Rawls?
Not so long ago, we had the gentleman from AltMed up here talking to us about purchasing property, and then I was with a developer a few weeks ago, and he was asking about the same thing and asked what the criteria was. So I wonder if we shouldn't have a workshop, Port Authority workshop, that revolves around our strategies for the port properties, what we're willing to do with them, what we're looking at, looking for out of them. Because I didn't know how to answer his questions, to be honest with you. There's right now, the city switched all that property to planned industrial, not business. So, I think we really need to sit down and talk with the city, see what their vision is as well, since they control the zoning out there. Make sure there's no conflicts with anything that we're looking to do.
Not a bad idea. Thank you. Commissioner Adamsat?
I guess I just have a question, if we have any update on the pipe that comes through the port, into the river from GP, what the depth is, if that's gonna affect our ideas on working with, the Army Corps of Engineers to dredge the port and.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I can take that.
Thank you, Mr.
I've had a conversation with the Army Corps of Engineers office out of Jacksonville this past Friday. I was waiting to see if we were going to get any written documentation, but the answer to the question is there is a pipe, but it's the permit from the Army Corps showed that it was at a depth of 19 feet. So the channel for the project at the port is 9 plus 1 plus 1, which is 11 feet. So they don't believe there's going to be any issue with the pipe itself if it is actually at 19 feet. And so they are aware of it, and that permit was pulled. And so the Army Corps gave me the information verbally. I was hoping to get something in writing this week to forward out to the board. But that's where we stand. It is a pipe, but it is at 19 feet.
Thank you.
I got a
Thank
question real quick.
Yes, did you say that, Mr. Ross?
The total depth will be 11 feet?
I believe so. I believe it was a 9 plus 1 plus 1 for the dredging of the channel.
Where is it right now?
7 feet?
Six?
No, 6? Okay.
So we're doing a 3-foot dredge?
I'm assuming so, yes, sir. That would be, the Army Corps' presentation was to make sure it was a 9 plus 1 plus 1. So,
And I'd like to comment before I call on Mr. Adamsat. We had a company that came by a few weeks ago to look at offloading some product from Virginia, but they needed 25 feet of depth, and it just wouldn't be profitable. So they're gonna have to go all the way around Florida and come into Tampa at this point. But they're gonna keep it on their radar and look and see if they can't bring smaller vessels through. That would accomplish some of that. So we'll keep you updated on that. Commissioner Adamsat?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I think when they said the 9 plus 1 plus 1, that's at low tide, correct?
low water mean, I believe is what he
Yeah,
said.
okay, thanks.
Mr. Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to bring this up this afternoon at workshop, but I'll go ahead and do it because we're in the discussion. I think that the Port Authority and possibly with as a partnership with the Development Authority needs to look at purchasing the Georgia Pacific Sawmill property. It's on the market right now for $1.4 million. It's 15 acres. It's right across the street from where this is. I think the Development Authority owns some land already and that's adjacent to it. And I think while this property is on the market, we need to take a serious look at getting it purchased. I don't think, if this property sells, I don't think that we'll have ever have the opportunity to purchase it again, especially for this amount of money. So I think that we need to seriously look at it. I don't even know who to contact. I just know the flyer was sent to me that it was for sale for because I asked somebody to look into it, and it was for sale for $1.4 million. It is on the market. So I think we need to figure out a way to buy this. If we've got to pay payments on it or whatever, I think we need to purchase this as part of the port expansion that we're all looking into trying to get done.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Sugg.
just for the record, we held I reached out to GP. Ms. Julianne and I met with a representative from GP about this very opportunity to discuss where they were, because I'd heard the property may or may not be for sale. I did receive an email back and with a contact for their real estate division, I believe is, I want to say maybe Atlanta or somewhere. So we'll reach out to them this week if it's the prerogative and the consensus of this board for me to do so.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And what do you need from us, the consensus to move forward?
Yes, sir, I'll reach out to them with
Just a wave
consensus.
of
That's
support,
wave
everybody?
and support, sir.
Everybody want wave and support? Okay, you got 5 waves and support. So I think it's a great idea. Commissioner Ross?
I keep hearing this port expansion talked about, and I really think we need to have a meeting sooner than later to discuss exactly what the definition of port expansion is. We've had no conversation as a group to either delineate what we're looking at or define what we're looking at. I think we need to sit down, have a conversation about what this port expansion is, what the strategy for the port is. You know, maybe some strategic planning might be nice, but, you know, personally, I feel like it's just kind of a runaway train and everybody's doing what they want to do. But we really need to sit down as a port authority. You know, the Economic Development Authority, whoever they are, we've never met with them the 2.5 years I've been here. I think it's time that we really sit down and have an open, frank dialogue so the public is aware of what we're doing, because this commissioner is absolutely confused as half the time that we're talking up here about this stuff, because nobody's giving me any useful information. And I don't think it's a situation where I should have to go knock on somebody's door and say, hey, can you tell me if you're working on something this week, what it is? So I think they owe it to us, whoever they are, whether it's the EDA or staff, to let us know what's going on, what they're working on.
Thank you, Mr. Roll. Mr. Turner?
I think, I feel the frustration, I do. This didn't come from anybody. This came from me finding out that it was for sale.
No, I support that 100%. Yeah.
It didn't come from anyone else. And so, I think I have no problem with doing what you're talking about doing, having a Port Authority workshop, you know, that's dedicated to this. But until we kind of find out what's going on with the, for sure what's going on with the Army Corps, everything else kind of revolves around it. But even if we ended up purchasing this property and they didn't dredge a port, it would still be, I think, a situation where it would be a valuable piece of property to further economic development within a community. You know, even if we split it up or did whatever and made it an incentive to bring in another company or whatever. So I think that I don't have any, like I said, I don't have any problem whatsoever in having a meeting on this. I just don't know what we'd meet about at this point, other than maybe discussing possibilities, because those possibilities all revolve around Army Corps. So, yeah, that's all I have, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Mr. Adamczak?
So we have to stop waiting for everything to fall into perfect alignment to do things. The port is usable today at 6 feet. The use case of 11 feet was a specific barge for Veritas steel that holds railroad type things that create a situation where that barge displaces water to go down to 9 feet, not even 11 feet. That's what was described during the meeting. There's plenty of barges. That barge at half weight only displaces 6.5 feet. So it would be usable today at high tide. And there is people that could use it today. So we need to start planning around the fact that what it could be used for today, what it could be used in the near term, and then what it could be used if in fact we get the Army Corps of Engineers to do the dredging, and if we decide to go forward with that based on what comes out of that. So I think we need to get on this sooner than later, and I agree that that property across the street is one of the linchpins to the whole thing.
Yep.
Because our current property is 2 white elephant buildings on a small acreage.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Roll?
And
And then I'll go to Mr. Soto.
echoing what Commissioner Adamczak just said about the property, and I agree with Commissioner Turner. If we don't have that, you know, I thought the Port Authority lost a great opportunity a long time ago when they didn't buy that 160 Comfort Road warehouse. That would have been a great grab at a couple of $1 million, whatever it sold for. It was like $3.2 million. To be able to have a laydown area, storage area, or to build port facilities like you have in Jacksonville, where you have businesses that bring in items, rework them, send them back out, whether vehicles, boats. You got lots of opportunity, but we do need a lot of land as part of our infrastructure. And I use that word infrastructure because right now we're sitting on a lot of infrastructure money, and that could be one use of it. But I agree. I don't think we need to wait for the Army Corps of Engineers. You know, I think we need to have a strategic plan, start deciding what the shape and focus of our port looks like, and focus on the port area. You know, we've got the business park and the ball field and all this other stuff. I think the big money maker for us is going to be at that port. I really do. I think that's going to bring a lot of opportunity for us for intermodal, but we've got to fix the rail spur, obviously. Probably wouldn't hurt to have access, if we did get that property from GP, maybe take a look at either abandoning or tying on that rail spur and coming off where GP is, and have that. That would be huge for us. So, just saying.
Mr. Sugg?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things is, I just want to remind the commission that we did hold a meeting here, a stakeholder meeting back in June regarding the port, where we had a good meeting. It was discussed at that point, the plan moving forward. Of course, you know, the process is that we got to get our federal interest determination through the Army Corps in the Atlanta office, and we were able to do that. This next step in the phase is to turn in what's known as a fact sheet, and that is going to be turned in, I believe, this week, and hopefully we'll have a response to that by the end of August this month. And at that point, there'll be another presentation made as to what it is that we're looking for, because then we'll start what's known as the feasibility study and the master plan. This has all been in the works now for, like I said, a couple of years. But we did hold a stakeholders meeting right here in this chamber last month, or in June, I believe it was, and had a really good turnout. And the gentleman who's helping us through the FID and the fact sheet, Mr. Rick Farron, did a really good presentation, as well as Mr. Sam Sullivan, who represents the project for the county. And so the process is this. Once we get those two determinations are available, or through Army Corps, we had a meeting, teleconference last week with the Army Corps and our legislator in Tallahassee to keep moving the process forward, because we're going to be applying for membership into the Florida Ports Council. And so what we'll do, if we can get there, that opens up more federal dollars for us to be included in the port system in the state of Florida. So this thing is a very slow-moving boat, no pun intended, but it really is. But there's been a lot of work done, and again, you don't have to wait for a meeting or knock on the door. We did hold a stakeholders meeting, and it was a very good meeting. We had a lot of representation from a lot of folks in town. So I'll be more than happy to sit down with anybody and discuss it further in detail as to what it is we're doing. But that's kind of where we're at. There is not a master plan. We know what we would like to see the port look like when it's done. We know our stakeholders and those that we would like to attract. There's a lot going into this, with the raising of the Shands Bridge, with the dredging of the port, the whole 9 yards. It's a major project. But we will certainly schedule another one, and I'd love to have everybody in the room, because I think it's very critical moving forward now, especially if we get the fact sheet approved in Atlanta this coming couple weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Suggs. Mr. Adams?
Yeah, so the Port Authority, my understanding is over not just that physical port, that physical location. Obviously, we own other locations throughout the county for business purposes, for economic development. But my understanding is it's for all transportation in and out of the county, whether it's rail, whether it's airplane, whether it's boat, whether it's large boat, small boat, roadways. So I think what I envision, if we have a plan for the Port Authority, isn't the port, it's the Port Authority, which the authority covers all of those means. And I'm growing tired, and not based on this specific thing, but I'm growing tired of us always saying we're going to wait. We're going to wait to take action. We're waiting on this. We're waiting on that. We need to stop waiting. We need to start taking actions on the things we know today and developing plans based on what we know today that can be changed and edited as new things come about, like dredging the port, which is a small portion of what the Port Authority oversees countywide, or could oversee countywide.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. All right. Any further discussion on Port Authority items? We will adjourn the Port Authority and reconvene the Board of County Commission meeting. And our first item on the agenda is item A, Resolution 2021-63, declaring an honorary designation of County Road Old Highway 17 as the A. Phillip Randolph Memorial Highway. Mr. Pickens, you have the floor for this, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Harvey. If I could ask Angel and everybody to meet me up at the podium. And Larry, could you go to
I'll be
to where the signs are? Good morning. A little over a year ago, probably 2 years ago, Angel Dukes came to me with the idea of honoring one of Putnam County, Crescent City native sons, Mr. A. Phillip Randolph, who was a civil rights activist, really, before Martin Luther King, worked with Martin Luther King to just make civil rights, better in Putnam, or in the United States of America. So we have went through the process to get everything in place to get a portion of Old 17 from Junction Road to New 17 designated as a Phillip Randolph Memorial Highway. Then this thing called COVID got on our way. We actually read a proclamation a little over a year ago, but everything was really put on hold. But what was not put on hold was Angel's determination to see this followed through. So today we're here to read the proclamation again and to unveil the signs that Charles and the sign shop made. And then she actually had a ceremony planned August 21st, Saturday at Even Lions Park in conjunction with Juneteenth. It was going to be a day and a half event, but with COVID kicking back up, that has been canceled also. But I'll let Angel speak to that after I read the proclamation. A resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Putnam County, Florida, declaring an honorary designation of County Road Old Highway 17 as the A. Phillip Randolph Memorial Highway. Whereas the Putnam County Board of County Commissioners and the residents of Putnam County desire to honor and memory of A. Phillip Randolph, who dedicated his life and work to cause to ending discrimination and injustice in workplace and communities across the country. And whereas Putnam County Board of County Commissioners would like to recognize A. Phillip Randolph's contribution to the civil rights movement and its impact to our community and country. And whereas pursuant to the authority of the Section 33605 Florida statutes, Putnam County wishes to commemorate and declare an honorary designation of County Road Old Highway 17 as A. Phillip Randolph Memorial Highway as a perpetual symbol of our appreciation, admiration, and respect. Now therefore be it resolved by the Putnam County Board of County Commissioners as follows. The Board of County Commissioners of Putnam County, Florida hereby adopt the above recitals and incorporate to herein as part of this resolution. The County Old Highway 17 in Putnam County shall be honored and remembered, memorialized by placing suitable markers designated County Road Old Highway 17 is the Old Highway 17 near the intersections of Junction Road and South Highway 17. The resolution is made in reference to County Road Old Highway 17 between Junction Road and South Highway 17. Putnam County's administrative staff is directed to erect honorary markers and describe in Section 2 further staff to direct and to provide a copy of the resolution to the Secretary of the Florida Department of Transportation, the United States Postal Service, Putnam County E-911 Coordinator, and Putnam County Sheriff's Office. This resolution shall become effective upon by the Board of County Commissioners of Putnam County, Florida, duly passed and readopted for presentation by the Board of County Commissioners of Putnam County, Florida, in a regular session this 10th day of August, 2021. Mr. Chairman, I move that this resolution be passed.
We have a proper motion by Commissioner Pickett, second by Commissioner Hall. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it.
Okay, and if my fellow commissioners will unveil, please. Angie, you want to say a few things?
In here with us too.
Want me to say something first? Okay,
While you're speaking, we're going to bring our staff over.
okay, all right.
Julianne, would you like to join us?
Good morning, everyone. This is a great day. This is a great day. As I read the Putnam Daily News, they always ask, what do you love about Putnam County? What I love about Putnam County is here, people like yourself. What I love about Putnam County is the people down in South Putnam. What I love about Putnam County is everything. I can't possibly cover it. I was raised here, left, traveled around the world, and came back. So it's a wonderful place. And I want to thank all of you for traveling with us on a journey over these past 2 years, in spite of the pandemic, to be able to honor someone as great as A. Phillip Randolph, Crescent City's native son. And I thank you all.
Oh, yeah, you got it. You're gonna need it. Go ahead and open, make sure it's open so you can use it.
You wanted to say when you may reschedule?
Yes.
Do you have any idea?
Yes. As Commissioner Pickens mentioned, we had an elaborate event scheduled for next week, the 21st. But because of the pandemic and out of concern for the citizens that we love, we didn't want to put them in harm's way. So we postponed it, not canceled, which means it would be a continuation. And we're looking possibly to have that sometimes in late October, early November. The weather is cool, everybody's out and about looking for something exciting to do, and we are going to wow them. So we will keep you posted as to the possibility of the new dates as we travel forth together to see how this pandemic will continue to affect us. Let's hope it goes away, which would be nice. And again, thank you so very much, and we do appreciate all that you've done. And I don't want to get emotional like I always do because I'm here. We're going to start from where we are. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Pickens.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
We're going to take a 2-minute recess. Okay.
You may be wondering what Flash Access 67 is. Well, that's the tagline for the Florida Association of Counties Broadband Internet Committee. This past June, while down in Orlando attending the Florida Association of Counties Educational Conference, Chairman Harvey received a presidential appointment to serve as chair of Broadband and Access 67 Committee for Florida. How wonderful to have one of our own representing on such a vital initiative. So Chairman Harvey, congratulations on that appointment. Gentlemen, y'all can put them down now.
I'd never live those pictures down.
But as I mentioned earlier,
Gonna do it then.
we're going to put them up over here so everybody can see them.
After that, I'd like to have that one from my office.
I can dress up like that if you want.
I don't want it in person, I just want to have that to remind me.
You know, this presentation is really meant to be both a little bit humorous because of Chairman Harvey's personality and the way that he likes to go about doing things. I will share that while we were at the conference, he wore this. These photos were taken at the conference. He wore them into the Access 67 meeting where broadband was being discussed to get the crowd going. And I'm going to tell you, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. And there was a lot of conversation in Orlando about this initiative. And it's something that we all need to be a part of and very proud of. And I'm frankly proud that the chairman is selected to be the chair of that committee.
Thank you.
But as I said earlier, he serves, Chairman Harvey serves on many, he wears many hats and serves on many state boards. And some of those are, he serves as the board of directors for the Florida Association of Counties. He also serves on the board of directors of Institute of County Government. He also serves as vice chair of Florida Association of Counties Trust, which is our insurance fund, you know. But he also serves on other things. And Chairman Harvey, if you'd be so kind as to join me down here at the podium this morning. Got a couple of presentations I'd like to make. For the last year, Chairman Harvey's also served as a board member for a small county coalition and has done tremendous work in Tallahassee with those folks on behalf of Putnam County and other rural communities in the state of Florida. So, Mr. Harvey, it's my distinguished honor this morning to present you with this plaque representing your outstanding leadership on small county coalitions for the state of Florida. Thank you, sir, for all you do. Thank you for honoring Chairman Harvey this morning, but we're not quite done. I also would like to go ahead and present Chairman Harvey with this pin that was also recognized at the Florida Association of Counties by the President for his outstanding accomplishments this year as the advocacy chair for the state of Florida as well. So thank you so much for all you do for not only Putnam County, but the entire state of Florida and the representation not only here, but in Tallahassee, but also at NACO and DC. Thank you so much for all you do. Now let's congratulate Commissioner Harvey on all he does for Putnam County. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Suggs. Yes, Mr. Turner, we can make that. We can even do life size if
Would
you
you
want.
sign it for me?
Yes, I'd be glad to. It's my privilege and honor to serve Putnam County, and it's also a privilege and honor to be part of an organization of commissioners throughout Florida. We really move the ball forward in a lot of areas with the Small County Coalition and the Florida Association of Counties. We work very hard, and I'm privileged and pleased to be a part of the presidential appointment that Commissioner Ralph Thomas made for Access 67. It's a big task, and it's going to be a big calling for me and my committee. But we all have internet. There's not hardly anybody in Florida that doesn't have internet. It's whether it's reliable, whether it's affordable, whether it's something that people can do work on, and that's what we're learning. So we've got a big task to do. We're going to be very helpful with the Department of Economic Opportunity and their mapping process, trying to get them there because they have to do a report to the legislators this year, and we feel like that's very important. So taking one for the team as far as dressing up and having fun, as your father would say, there's always a chance to have levity in every situation. And we did that there, so we had a good time. But Commissioners, thank you for allowing me the opportunity, and thank you to the citizens of Putnam County. Thank you.
You know, one last comment, Mr. Chairman, from while you're having your seat is I just want to say what a privilege it is to be able to go out of town and see the leadership that you have and the respect that you have around this state of Florida. It was absolutely remarkable. We certainly had a good time, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Suggs. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. All right, there. That was Colonel Wells, can you sit there with those pictures in front of you? And it's not going to bother you too much. But there is a secret weapon, so if you need any help at the SO, just give Flash Drive a call. That's what it's all about. All right, the next item, Mr. Adams, thank you.
Well, Chairman Harvey, congratulations on your appointment to that Highway 67 you're calling it? Access 67. I guess I'd ask is if, I've listened in on some of them are recorded, so several of the meetings, I've listened to some of the recordings, and I've listened into 2 of the meetings, I think, since they started having them regularly. If you could, at any chance, add to one of the agendas an update from you with regards to that, I'd appreciate that.
Be glad to. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is our public comment on agenda items. Is there anybody here that would like to speak a public comment on agenda items? There will be time later for public comment on miscellaneous, but right now we do have a agenda, and seeing no one rushing to the microphone, we will end the public comment period for the consent agenda. And commissioners, on item F on the consent agenda, that item has been asked to be pulled. There is still some auditing going on with that item, so it's not ready to be closed out just yet. So, Commissioner Rawls, do you have any items you want to pull?
I think for discussion, I'm going to, Port Buena Vista, J,
Item J,
just for discussion.
okay. Mr. Pickens,
I have none.
Mr. Turner,
I have none.
Mr. Adams, Act.
B and C.
Okay. That's B as in boy, C as in cat.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion on items A, D, E, G, H, I, and K.
So moved.
Proper
Second.
motion by Commissioner Turner, proper
Mr.
second.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
wasn't there an addendum for L?
Yeah, there was.
Chairman, I believe
E,
the,
Public Works.
I believe the addenda was simply a clarification of the cover sheet. There was a typographical error for the morning meeting, and then there was an addendum adding an item for the workshop.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
This falls under D.
Okay, so we have a proper motion by Commissioner Turner, proper second by Commissioner Rawls. Any further discussion on the items? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. We'll start with Commissioner Rawls. You were first, so let's go to Point Buena Vista wastewater.
Just a question, the last time we talked about this, is part of the design going to Port Buena Vista, including any other points that we can connect the force main to in the future, or is there any
Why don't we have,
consideration for that?
why don't we ask Mr. Troxel to come up, and I think that's a great question.
We're fixing to spend almost $400,000 of our money. I'm just wondering if it wouldn't make sense to pony up a little bit more if we can to make it more accessible for future.
Yeah, I believe part of the design will include some taps on that system so that we can increase our usage for the sanitary sewer out there.
Okay.
Right, good. Thank you. Mr. Rawls, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve item J.
Okay, do we have a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, we have a proper motion by Commissioner Rawls, proper second by Commissioner Pickens. Any further discussion on item J? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. I'm sorry, mister?
I lit my light. I guess where are we pulling the money for this, out of what budget?
I think we had decided it'd come straight out of general fund. didn't we?
Exactly.
Fund, okay.
Hold on just a second, Commissioner.
Have to then get into-
This is the item that we had in workshop last week, for which we have theoretically tabled where it's gonna come from until we determine whether or not ARPA funding is available for use in this project. If not, of course, it would come back to the general fund. But at this time, there are several options that we are exploring as far as where the local match would come from.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Adamczak, you have items B and C. Let's start with B.
Just the same old, same old. Again, until I can understand how we get this thing to be economically solvent, I just can't vote yes for any expansion to this project or any of our sewer projects. I guess I have an additional question, and maybe Mr. Troxel can answer it. I was looking through the fee schedule on one of the different sewage plants, and I guess there's a fee for, I guess they could come with a truck and put sewage into our system. And do we actually have people doing that today, and how often are they? I'm looking at it as maybe a potential means to get biosolids through the system and maybe generate some income.
Right now, there is none, but there was in the past. But right now, we do not have any.
But we still have the hookups to be able to do that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Troxel, where is that dump at, the dump station for that hookup?
It would be at the sewage plant.
At the
on
sewage plant.
Gilbert Road, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
It's only at one of them, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Rawls?
It's a really low cost to add those in at any point where you have a wet well. You could put in, basically a dump station. If you've ever seen the one by Crystal Cove, that pipe, that's what that's for.
Okay.
It dumps in, goes by gravity to their gravity system, the wet well, and then gets lifted. You know, I
It
don't
would
know
have to
if-
be metered somehow though, right? So I think there's some expense to metering.
You know, I don't know how the city meters theirs. There's no meter at that one location. And I know that, you know, at one point, we were dumping leachate
You're
from
right.
the landfill right into a manhole, and there's no way to meter that as well. So I don't, you know, that would just be a conversation we'd have to have between utility and, but it is a service that, I agree, I think, and especially with the biosolids conversation going on, that we could provide if we made it more accessible, easily accessible, it might get utilized more often.
I agree. Okay, Chair will entertain a motion on item B and C.
Move approval.
Proper motion by Commissioner Turner. Do we
I'll
have a
second.
Second by Commissioner Pickens. Any further discussions on item B and C? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Turner.
I was gonna wait until my comments at the end of the meeting, but I think maybe it's appropriate I do it now if you'll allow.
I will allow.
There's no way that we're going to make each plaque of water and sewer sustainable other than to grow our way out of it. That's the end of the story. We're still looking at different ways to do work on the loans and whatever, and that's a much more complicated than just deciding to pay one off. Because if you have no benefit, there's no need in paying it off. And so we're yet to find that benefit. We're hoping that some of the ACA money, because right in the description, it flat says it's used for infrastructure, water and sewer, can be used for possible expansion of the system. Well, the only way to make this work is to expand it to make it sustainable. And so if we can use part of that money, which it was directly in the description that it's allowed for, then it would move us on that road to sustainability. Also, we have, at this present time, we have plenty of capacity at our sewer facility, and so we need to try to expand that as well because we can do it without building a new plant. So that's kind of where we are right now. Before, y'all voted to let me take a look at this, and I know you think we're dragging around, but we're really not. It just got a lot more complicated than what I ever thought it would be, and so between the budget officer and the county and Ms. Franks down at the clerk's office, they've been working pretty diligently to try to come up with possible solutions to bring to the board for recommendations. But it's just taking time. Ms. Franks, I understand, is having to go back to the original contract on the 5 loans and read every line item and all the amendments in the original contracts from way back when till now to try to come up with any possible recommendations. So it is taking a while, but the only way this is gonna happen is to grow our way out of it. And hopefully by doing so, we can stop paying the money out of the Better Place plan and the money that's retained in the Better Place plan for that payment when down the road. There's a lot of money could be freed up if we can get there. So I realize the stakes are high and we are working on it. It's just gonna take some time to get it done. It's not gonna happen in a week or so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner, for all your effort on that. Mr. Adams,
So my concern goes beyond the loans, per se. Obviously, it'd be great to pay off any debt that the county has. That would be fantastic. But I do agree, if it's a low percentage rate loan, sometimes it makes sense to keep that loan going forward. So that would be on a case-by-case basis, obviously. What I'm talking about is the operational costs of the system, of adding users. From the looks of it, when you look at the numbers to add pipes and add users and add the pumps, you know, it looks like it would take 8 to 10 years to recover those costs of every user connected. So, and those pumps are only good for 5 years, then well, they're only warranted, hopefully they last 20 years. So my concern is that even with growing it, that we're adding to a perpetual issue, and at some point we may need to cap it. So I'm looking more at the operational necessary than the actual dollars and cents of the loans. The loans will go away once they're paid off, whether we decide to pay them off in a lump sum or over time. So I'd like to see us separate that a little bit and, again, go for the operational. How many pumps to get it solvent, given that, you know, at some point, maybe the money stops coming from St. John's Water Management, which it probably won't, because it's to their advantage to have us do this, because it's costing them a lot less than it's costing us in the long term. So they're basically forcing our hand to do something in the name of protecting the river, which may or may not actually protect the river, first of all, because there's many cases made that a septic system that properly functions does the same thing as a sewer system. So, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm talking more the operational expenses and the forward thinking of what they may cost maintenance-wise and other things compared to what we're putting into it and what we're bringing in from the users, who are limited. We have the number 2,000 I gave out is very aggressively high for the number of users we actually have connected.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Turner?
I guess your fixed costs are gonna remain the same whether you hook up one sewer or 1,000 sewers. Your fixed costs are gonna remain the same as far as your administrative costs and those type of things. And so I understand where you're coming from, that if it actually costs us to have somebody else on the system, then we're going in the wrong direction. So far, I don't believe that to be the case. If it is, then part of this recommendation is going to be to increase the fees to where at least you're making some money per household on the deal. You can increase the fees at this time to cover this and make it sustainable, because people's sewer and water bill would be higher than their mortgage. So, but at some point, as you move this forward, you're going to be able to make it sustainable off the households. And yes, there's probably going to be part of this. I'll go out on a limb and say it. There's probably part of this solution and recommendation is going to be a small to moderate increase in the price that we're charging for water and sewer. I don't know, because that's just going to be a piece of the pie. And I haven't even cut the crust yet. I mean, this is taking a lot more time. It's a lot more complicated than what we're giving it out to be. I mean, it's not, and the only way we're going to make it work is to make it large enough to where the households will sustain the system. We have the capacity at the plant. We're running at about 40% capacity. It may change here and there, but it's about 40%, maybe 45. So I don't think that we need to sit on 55 to 60% capacity on that plant. We need to expand that system and utilize that, because it's sitting there going away. It's going to age, and even if the pumps aren't running, it's going to age and go away. We need to utilize that asset, and the only way to utilize it is to expand the system to where it brings them in. So Once we get to about 75%, then we'll keep the 25% capacity to keep from having to build another plant. But if we're making money, if we get at 70 to 75% capacity on sewer and we expand our water system, we're at the same, about 70 to 75% capacity, then you should be, if you're not making money at that point, you're not charging enough. That's all there is to it. And so at that point, you would take it and build in those rate increases where if the system becomes sustainable then. So, but for right now, the next step is to take every grant that water management will give us, or if ACA money is allowed to do it by the pure definition of it, take some of that and expand it. I understand giving it back to the people is the preferable when we can, but instead of giving them $500 now as a shot in the arm, a lifetime sustainability of a system that's going to protect the environment and whatever might be a little more advantageous. That's just another way to look at that discussion. So anyhow, it's coming, Mr. Chairman. It's just, if any of y'all get tired of waiting, I'll be damn happy to turn it over to any one of you that want it. And you can take over my research where I left off and keep at it. Because it's taken a tremendous amount of time to try to come up with reasonable solutions to that problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Rawls, you have the floor, sir.
I think we owe it to the public to hold a workshop where we get all the information on the table at one time, water and sewer. Take a look at where we are with the longevity of the equipment. Commissioner Turner has a great point. It does have a life expectancy. We also have milestones that we have to meet as far as maintenance goes, see where we are in those milestones. But I think we need to have a conversation about this. The work that Commissioner Turner is doing regarding break even is one thing, but I think we really need to start wrapping our heads around this. Take a look at the possibility of maybe bringing in someone else to help manage this. I was in St. Johns County today and I saw a JEA placard. I didn't realize that JEA was in St. Johns County, and it went through my mind, what if we partner up with someone like JEA? There's lots of possibilities. One question that's never been answered that I asked a long time ago is, can the Putnam County Port Authority own a utility? Can we be in the utility business? What if we started expanding lines with money like that? But there's also, we could take a look at it from an EDA perspective and see if maybe it makes sense to do that. But there is some promising growth coming to looking at Putnam or East Palatka right now. I think that we're not going to be having this conversation for much longer, but I do think that we need to take a look at this thing holistically. It was imposed on us. None of us were here when it was decided to put in. But I think that from my perspective, I would like to know as much about this as I can. Let's get staff in here, have a conversation with them, find out what their pains and gains are, what we need to do to help them. I don't like the fact that we govern by crisis lately, and it feels like we're responding to crises. And this is a crisis. If it's not happening, and I don't know that it's not, is going to be happening real soon if we're not careful. So I for one, would like to be ahead of it.
Thank you, Mr. Adamczak.
Yeah, and I appreciate your efforts wholly, Terry. Unfortunately, we can't talk about it offline outside of sitting here, so I don't have an update, so that's just part of the process of Florida government. I do think, when I think about this, and I sat down and I'm not in the weeds like you are, it does appear to me that growing the water system would definitely benefit us quicker and better than growing the sewer, just from the raw numbers, the simplicity of the numbers, just because there isn't that pump at each house and all the other extra things that come with it. So, I mean, I'd like to see us, if we were going to use ARPA money, I'd like to see us grow the water system first as a priority to if we choose to go that path.
We're looking at that.
Yeah, so as far as, giving it to the community, again, this system services a very minute portion of our population, very, very small. We have 75,000 citizens. I think it's more like 77,280, but we have somewhere between 74 and 78,000 citizens in this county today. And I gave the estimate of 2,000 are serviced by our county water and sewer. It's probably less than that. This again, to use ARPA money to fund the needs of 2,000 people when it could be something could be done to help 75,000, or a critical need of a group of people that costs the society a lot of money, like those, the drug addicted and mental health addicted or inflicted. I just think there's better use of that ARPA money as we have it presented to us in this county today. That's not really directly associated to that, but I would be a long step for me to get to funding sewer with ARPA. I may be able to get there with water.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Turner?
As far as the workshop goes, we can have a workshop, but I think we're gonna run into the same thing that I've been running into since I took this over, which is ask a question, research it for a few days, and then come back and you don't know what the questions are to research till you ask them. And most of the time when you go and do the research, all that does is create another question. So you got to go research that too. That's what's taking this time. And if I could get all the players in one room at one time, no one has the ability to answer these questions without doing some research, because most of this stuff was done before before anybody in this room or anybody at the county was even here. And so at some point there's gonna have to be a workshop, and it's hopefully not gonna be in the very too distant future, to discuss all these possible solutions or recommendations that are gonna come forth. But I'm not ready for it yet. And like I said, if y'all get in a hurry, ain't no problem. I'll give it to any one of you that want it, because I certainly have other things to do also. So I'd be happy to. So, but it's gonna take a little more time than what you've allowed me to do this. The other thing is, Commissioner Rawls made a comment a minute ago about a utility, either a utility authority or could the Port Authority have a utility portion of it. I've also asked that question and not been able to find out what's going on. Could we research that a little deeper and find out? I mean, I know that we can't have certain things, but if the county can own a Port Authority, can the Port Authority have a utility division in it? Or why couldn't we have a utility authority? Because, I mean, I don't know if we can or we can't or whatever, but if it's just not possible, then okay. But if we could, that would be a step in the right direction, if you took everybody in the county that had electricity, and you put $1 a month on their light bill. Now, I understand $1 a month, and I'm gonna have the people that say, oh, you raised my taxes $1.
I'll be right there with you.
Okay,
I
but
agree.
$1 a month. So you got all these households in the county, 35,000 households in the county. That's $35,000 a month that's gonna come in to help pay, if nothing else, help pay for what Commissioner Adams Act hates so much, which is the water and sewer service that everybody's paying for now at a better place. So, I mean, and then that would fund some expansion, and that would do some different things. And at some point, there may be some in your district if you wanted one or whatever, but it has to make economic sense with residential sense. I mean, commercial sense too, which is why I think it started out where it did, because of looking for economic expansion in that area. But anyhow, I would like to look into that to see if there's a way that we could have a utility authority, or we could have or the port could have a utility division. I think that, if there's a way we could work that out, we could start negotiations with Clay Electric and FPL and, landline for the phone companies and things along those lines. It may even be, and I know this is way early to say this, but it may even be that I know that some areas and cities and whatever actually have cable franchises to where if you have Comcast cable or whatever, 50 cents a month or whatever would go towards the utility authority or whatever to help fund some of these other things that are now coming straight out of the general fund. So anyhow, that's just another thought. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Mr. Turner. Mr. Ross?
So, thank you for those comments, because been trying to say this for 2.5 years, and Mr. Reynolds and I had a conversation a couple of years ago where I asked him why it was that we could not collect franchise fees from the utility companies, and it was because we're a constitutional form of government. But he also shared with me that if we did the same thing that Palaca did, that we would benefit somewhere around $9 million, and that was based on the numbers a couple of years ago. So that's where my question goes to. If we were allowed to have a utility authority, then could we not transfer the easements that the power lines are in and then be able to have a franchise fee? Get into the data business. You know, we're sitting up here talking about broadband. You take a look at Gainesville Regional Utilities has a data division. They sell internet. How weird is that, you know? And this isn't us competing against private business. This is us providing something that I see as essential going forward. I don't think that, just like we need to get off sewer to be able to protect the wetlands and the aquifer, we also need to be able to get folks onto the internet because it looks like about 20 to 25% of our economy is now shifted to working from home. If that stays in perpetuity, then it makes sense for us to be in that business. And you know, if we're the ones that can extend that data out there, either hardwired or via the last mile solution that Microsoft has, or whatever the flavor of the day is, because right now we're getting bombarded with all these different options. I think it benefits the public at the end of the day, and then it relieves a lot of the strain that we have on the general fund, and allows us to pave more of our roads or put in more sidewalks or do better for the citizens with regarding to substance abuse and mental health brick and mortar. But and I agree with what Commissioner Adamczak said too. I think that we need to quit looking at this ARPA money for the government. I want to talk about it more in the commission comments, but I'll leave it alone now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rawls. We're going to move on to item 7, codes enforcement. Mr. Moore. Item number A, fine reduction case, code case 2009-00943. Good morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Commissioners. The address is 301 Wakula Street. Property owner's name is C3 Solutions. The violation was unsafe structure. The original fine amount was $23,295.50. Total cost of enforcement action was $5,777. The property owner recently purchased the property. Property is now compliant, and he is now requesting a fine reduction. If the board approves, we recommend the reduced fine to be paid within 90 days.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions for Mr. Moore from the commissioners? Is the applicant here that would like to speak?
No, sir.
Okay, commissioners, what's your pleasure on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we reduce this fine by taking off the administrative monthly fees to an amount of $4,367 payable in 90 days.
Proper motion by Commissioner Turner.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Rawls, I believe.
Yep.
Okay, so any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, like sign, the ayes have it. Mr. Moore, case number 2012-00261, Blue Sky Contracting and Construction.
Address is 108 Broadway Street. The violation was unsafe structure. The original fine amount was $6,218.50. Total cost of enforcement action was $2,601. The property owner has recently purchased the property. He is now compliant and requesting a fine reduction. If the board approves, we recommend the reduced fine to be paid within 90 days.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions for Mr. Moore? Is the applicant here would like to speak?
Yes, sir.
Please come forward, state your name for the record and your address.
Justin Morris, 180 Stokes Landing Road, Palaca. We purchased this property in November, and prior to purchasing, and I had a couple conversations with codes, and although they didn't do the calculation on the exact hard cost of it, we had discussions about how the procedure went for fine reductions and whatnot, and to be honest with you, we were only expecting $1,200 or $1,400 worth of fines. Now, obviously, we can't hold them to that, but we are in the process of taking these these old, dilapidated, abandoned houses, and getting them back on the tax roll, making them where they are viable for Putnam County citizens, having some we're doing this in the neighborhoods that aren't necessarily the most affluent neighborhoods in the county. So we have recently purchased one on Hudson Avenue. We have one on Gaskin Road, all of which have been abandoned for multiple years. Some have codes cases, some don't, but we are trying to provide a service that is benefiting Putnam County beyond just the codes case implied here. So any help you guys could provide beyond what the recommendation there, we'd appreciate it. Like I said, we were expecting about a half of what they are recommending for the fine there.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Just
Yeah.
hang on for a minute. You might be right where you're at, so
All
just
right.
hang tight.
Mr.
Commissioner,
Chairman.
yes, Mr. Turner.
I move that we reduce the fine by the administrative monthly fee to $1,481 to be payable within 90 days.
Proper
Second.
motion by Commissioner Turner, proper second by Commissioner Adamsack. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Very
Commissioner.
much. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Next item, Clerk of the Court, Mr. Matt Reynolds.
I have nothing this morning. Thank you, sir.
Stick around afterward. We'll
Mhm.
talk about ARPA.
Will do.
Okay. Appointments, board members, let me start with Commissioner Rawls. You
I have
any-
none.
Yep. Commissioner Pickens?
Yeah, I'd like to reappoint for the Fair Authority Board for District 1, Wayne McLean.
Okay, great. Mr. Turner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate, because it's an at-large position, Mr. John Traxler to continue on the Animal Services Advisory Committee.
Proper motion by Commissioner Turner,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Rawls. Any further discussion on Mr. Traxler? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
I have nothing further.
All right, Mr. Adamsack.
So I just have a procedural question, I guess, and Terry, I'm used to dealing with Sarah with her being out, it's kind of, so I had one of my members of the Animal Services Advisory Committee sent me an email saying that she can no longer participate due to going back to work and having to be out of town at the time of the meetings. Is there a procedure I need to follow, or does she need to contact someone, or was the email I sent suffice for taking her off? I just want to make sure that we followed proper procedure before we put it on here.
I
next
think the
meeting.
email, Commissioner Amzak, will work just fine if you want to make the recommendation that one of your appointees is no longer available to serve and want to bring a recommendation back to the board for a replacement. I think we're good with that.
Okay. So Yvette Reyes is no longer able to serve due to restarting work in Jacksonville, so she won't be in town at the time the meeting is held for this particular committee.
Just follow the process of having them fill out an application so we get the information gathered up and we can bring it back to a board at a future meeting and make the appointment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adamsack. All right, and I have no appointments to make. County Administrator, Mr. Suggs.
Just a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. One is, we're dealing with COVID, just like everybody else is around here. Mr. Grimes has been running with a deficit for a couple of weeks now, but, we're doing the best we can to protect our staff, Mr. Siafi and his family as well. So I just want to remember those folks today and let them know we're thinking about them and anything that we can do for them as well. But no, sir, that's pretty much my comments for, no, sir, I have one more. Miss Sarah Carone, could you please stand up, please?
Come down front.
Oh, see, now they're going to make you come down. My bad. But as Ms. Carone makes her way down front here, just want to do a quick introduction. And Sarah, I apologize for not writing on my agenda. Ms. Carone is our new Human Resources Director and comes to us from Alachua County from the Department of Health. Ms. Carone was, I believe, 14 years with the Department of Health, and she managed about 20 counties as a regional HR director, had about 3,500 people under her responsibility. So just want to say here today, thank you for applying and thank you for being part of our team, and we're looking forward to all the good things that are going to come from your appointment as the new HR director.
Great, thank you.
Mr.
I'm happy
Chairman?
to be here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before I turn it over to the commissioners to,
For the grilling?
I was actually,
not the grilling.
I was born and raised in Alachua County. And as Mr. Suggs said, I have worked for the Department of Health for just under 14 years before coming over here. And I've spent all that time in human resources. So I have my degrees in leadership in organizational management, business administration, and have just had a great time with human resources. I love it.
Good deal. Well, thank you. Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just want to say that I had the pleasure of meeting Sarah on her first day here last Monday, and she's made it a week, and she's still happy, so I'm happy too.
Everybody keeps
So-
saying that. I think I'm missing something. They're like,
No,
you're
it's a
back. You came
joke.
back.
It's a joke. I was sitting-
Well, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
I was sitting in the hallway waiting on you that morning.
That's
so
right.
No pressure at all,
Yeah.
right? So good. We are glad you're with us today, and we,
Thank
you
you.
know, it is a joke. That's all
I
it
know.
is. It's nothing, okay? So, and we appreciate Ms. Duque for recruiting you to come to
Yeah.
Putnam County. So,
Love Diana.
yeah, so we thank you very much. And
Sure.
we appreciate you being on board. Look for great things to happen. So
Thank you.
soon we'll be talking insurance, I'm sure. So,
I think on Wednesday, yep.
yeah, I think there's, meeting coming up tomorrow, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken. So good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, I want to say something before I turn it. There's a lot going on in this county, and it's hard. I hear your frustrations sometimes of, you know, getting the information, and it's hard for all of us. Best thing I can do is walk the halls around here, talk to all the department heads and see what's going on. I know, I want to say this, why Public Safety Director Grimes and Chief Hutchinson, I thought I saw them here. They've been working very diligently with COVID and the situation that's been going on with that. And I would have asked you to avail yourself to talk to him and to the staff about the problems they've been dealing with and how they've overcome a lot of things. So, you know, it's just a lot happening right now in this county, and just take advantage of meeting with staff and getting that information. Mr. Commando, do you have any words?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Glad you're back. Commissioner comments, I'll start to my right. Mr. Adamczak.
So I guess I have several things, so I'll start with the first one. I continue to be disappointed in the way that we handle our miscellaneous public comments and holding them at the end of the meeting. I think if we're going to do it not at the beginning of the meeting, we should have a set time for them, so that someone has the expectation if they're working or if they're otherwise preoccupied, that they could be here at that time, do their comment and leave, if they feel so inclined. That is I believe it's their right to be able to have the comment, and without a time certain, it could be today it's 10:15, last week it would have been almost noon. I just find it very, if I was a citizen, I'd be offended, let's just put it like that. So I'd like to see us, I guess I'd like an answer of why we can't put a set time on that, Chairman Harvey.
The answer is pretty clear that the board allowed this change to take place, and the board will make any changes from this point forward if they want to do that. So I just control the meeting, that's all I do.
At no point was I in a meeting where the board voted to change the way that we do this.
I think you were here. We decided this when I became chairman, that we would move this around, and the board approved that.
I'd like to see that, but I make a motion that we make time certain for public comment and miscellaneous to 10 a.m. certain.
I'd second that. I think it's a great idea.
Proper motion by Commissioner Adamczak, proper second by Commissioner
Wait a
Rawls.
minute, I want to.
Wait, Commissioner Pickens has the floor.
Okay, so why 10? Why not have it at 9?
Oh, I would prefer it to be
You
in the
know, I
beginning of the
mean,
meeting, sure.
Are you having people, are they disappointed that they have to sit through a meeting, Paul? I'm just asking
Absolutely.
ask this
And I've had
question.
people that don't come to meetings because they don't want to sit through the whole meeting to have their comment. We've had blue cards come up here, and when he goes at the end of the meeting, look for him, the people are no longer here. That's happened several times,
Yeah.
sitting here watching it. So definitely that's happening.
Only time I saw that was when it was the monument ordinance. I can't say that I've seen anybody leave, but, you know, they may have to leave. The citizens, and I'm just, for my information, the citizens that, and I do believe they need the opportunity for public comment, do they not feel that they can contact a commissioner with their issues, or they want to do both?
So there's a difference between having a conversation with the commissioner one-on-one in private, or via email or via phone conversation and doing it in a public forum, which is taped and aired out to the masses on YouTube. Yes, we are not getting a lot of hits on our YouTube, but it is increasing. There's a big difference between those two things, and I believe that the people have the right to that public forum.
Mr.
That's all I've got right now.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Well, I totally agree that people have the right to speak, no doubt, but they don't have the right to speak just whenever they want to.
That's why we should make it time certain.
I'm not going to debate this with you, because I didn't say anything when you did it, when you were talking. So, I have no problem with like it is. It helps keep order to the meeting. I understand that somebody doesn't know exactly when they're gonna speak, but when we're in the middle of a certain conversation or a certain, discussion on whatever it is, then we're gonna basically stop that discussion and have public comment and then go back to that discussion. Is that what we're talking about doing instead of having it on the agenda in the spot?
I'd be willing to amend the motion to have it be back to the beginning of the meeting as it was prior.
That would be a totally different motion, but I'm done, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
Thank you. I didn't understand what Mr. Adamczyk said.
I'd be willing to amend the motion to have it go back to the way it was
Your
prior.
motion to do what you want to do. But before we go there, Mr. Rawls wants to talk about the original motion.
Either way, I think, we're here to serve the public, not be served by the public. I think it's rude and disrespectful of us. I've discussed this in other meetings. I think we should be holding nighttime meetings so we can engage the public and give them their opportunity to be here. A large portion of our public is not able to be here because they have to be at work. And this isn't something I haven't discussed in the past, obviously, but I think it is disrespectful that we hold ourselves of more importance. This morning, we honored our chairman, and instead of letting the public come first. If they have a job to get to, they need to be able to get in here, get what they need to be said, so we can gain from the benefit of hearing what the public that we serve has to say about whether or not we're doing a good job, a bad job, let us know their concerns or cares, whatever it is. But I think we definitely need to be taking them into consideration first, not last.
Well, I'll weigh in on this topic. When we made the change, basically, I thought we increased the public comment portion of our meeting. Sometimes meetings get hijacked when you're the chair, and you try not to make that happen. I'm not in favor of stopping the meeting just because we hit a certain time and everybody gets a chance to speak. I'm not in favor of somebody rushing the podium and throwing down while somebody is giving us a presentation. I'm not in favor of that. This commissioner will never be in favor of that. This commissioner will be in favor of a citizen speaking on any item that they want to speak on during the meeting. But there has to be order in the building. And I think that we've increased that. I think that we've allowed that. And I think at the end of our meeting, when we have miscellaneous items that they want to talk about, that's more than adequate. And I think that's been very good. The only time I've seen it disruptive is during the meeting we had, and that was going to be disruptive no matter what that was. And frankly, I'm sorry some people had to leave, but we had business to take care of. And it wasn't deliberate, and it had nothing to do about that topic. So thank you. Mr. Adamczyk, you have the floor.
I would like to amend my motion to set the time back to the way it was prior to the change at the start of our meeting.
So you want to get rid of miscellaneous items and put it to the front and get rid of the public comment on agenda items? Is that what I'm hearing? Or have both?
You could do both. It doesn't.
So you want to have miscellaneous items
My
first?
motion has nothing to do with public comments on agenda items.
Okay, I'm having a hard time hearing you today. I'm sorry.
My motion is not with regards to your desire to have public comment on agenda items.
So you just
It's about
want to,
miscellaneous items.
you want to
But
move.
if you want to combine the two, I'm fine with that.
No, I don't want to do that, but that's the will of the board. But, so you want to move the miscellaneous items to the front of the meeting without a time certain?
Yeah, as it was prior. It didn't have a time certain before, right, last year?
Have a motion on the floor,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Rawls. Pickens, you have the floor on the new motion.
All right, I'm gonna ask this question, and I think I know the answer, but you're the chairman this year, and so you have a preference of how you wanted this done. I would assume it's the way it is. That's the way you want to keep it, or are you amendable to move it back to the way it was?
I just felt like when I started taking over the chairmanship, that I wanted people to have more access to public, to us, to be able to speak to us about items. In the past, I've noticed when we've had miscellaneous items up front, that the meeting kind of gets hijacked, and it's hard to get back on topic if you're going through things, or people want an answer from us immediately, and that's not plausible. We can't do that. We can do it at the end of the meeting. We can research it. So, in my opinion, Commissioner Pickens, as you had just asked me, I'd like to leave it alone. It is. We've got 2 more months. I won't be chairman again, I'm sure. Somebody else will, and that person can bring it to the board of the pleasure as they see how to run a meeting. But until you sit in this seat and run that meeting as you have before, and you know how that is, I feel like this is a very good process, and we've opened it up to public comments quite more. So, thank you.
Okay, that's all I'm.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I totally agree. And not only that, with having them at the end of the meeting, it gives people the opportunity, the citizens, the opportunity to comment on items that have been discussed during that meeting. So, I'm going to support you on what you want as far as being able to run the meeting and carry on with that.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Rawls?
Well, as always, anybody can sit in and discuss anything that's on the agenda when it comes up. That has nothing to do with public comment. We've sat in here before and had meetings that concluded in less than an hour. So if somebody says, you know what, I'm not going to get there before 10 o'clock because they're going to make me sit till 11 o'clock anyways, they might miss their opportunity because of that. I obviously am in support of this, but I'm also in support of nighttime meetings that would allow more public access to us, because I don't think we do a good job engaging our public and letting our public know what's really going on, and we talk about transparency up here a lot. We really do, but I don't think we're that transparent. I tell people all the time, I am going to question every single thing that comes out of a government, whether it's our local government, our state government, or federal government. As a citizen, as a representative of the public, that is my duty, and I think we owe it to them to put them first. But I'm obviously voting in favor of this.
Okay, we have proper motion on the floor. Mr. Adams, before I take a vote?
No, we can vote.
Okay, we have proper motion. All in favor of Mr. Adams' motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? Aye. Motion failed. Mr. Adams, you still have the floor under commissioner comments.
My next comment is, I guess we discussed last week, and we had, or I guess 2 weeks ago, I would like to know when we're going to have the next budget discussion, and whether it's a workshop or otherwise, and what type of data we're going to get prior to that discussion would be good, because I don't feel like we've been given adequate data, and even my questions have been answered, some of them, some still are outstanding. Again, I'd like to have a public forum where we discuss the budget prior to us approving it in September, and I'd like that to be as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. That was on my list of things to talk about, so we can go ahead and do that. But Mr. Rawls, your light came on, so you can have the conversation.
No, yesterday I attended the city CRA meeting. I did it virtually because I was actually leaving work and driving back to St. Augustine. And it was interesting because the first 30, 40 minutes, I was listening to the city conclude their budget meetings where they invited each department head to come up. They went through their budget. They engaged each department head individually, one-on-one. So at the end of the CRA meeting on a comment, I said, I just want to let you know I'm jealous of your process. I think that they do it right. I think that we do it wrong. And I've got some other stuff that I'd like to talk about under the budget process when it's my turn to talk. But I really think that we owe it to the public to do a better job, and not to forget the employees and the department heads and all that
Chairman,
actually
is this
stuck with
Mr.
us.
Adams' comments, or is
It
this
is.
Mr. Rawls' comments?
It is. That's fine.
Okay.
Mr.
I don't get this. You know, I honestly would just assume you tell me to shut up.
All right, we're
And-
not
and-
going to do
and-
that.
and not-
We're not.
What'd you just say?
No,
I
we're
said, I would
not.
assume you just tell me to shut up, because I thought
Mr. Rawl-
part of the
I think I said
process,
that at
I
all.
hit my light, I requested permission to speak, I was asked to speak.
Okay, it is under, see, I think we've expanded commissioner comments to different things now, but
This is
we
how
will be
government
going
should
over,
work.
we will be talking about the budget, I promise you, and we can do that now if the board decides. We work as a team here, and we're going to have that conversation. So, Mr. Adamczyk, you
I'm
still
for
have the
doing it
floor.
now. We can do it now.
Okay, you want to have that
Sure.
conversation now? So, Mr. Adamczyk is requesting another meeting with the Board of County Commissioners on the budget. I have it on my list of items to talk about. This commissioner personally is getting the information. I'm spending time with staff, and I'm doing that. I do take a little offense, and I'm going to have to use that word, that we did have the department heads come in and give us what they wanted to have this year, and it was a pretty extensive list. But we have a staff, and when we pull staff off of their daily jobs to answer all of our questions, it takes away from their daily jobs, but that's part of their job, and they realize that. But kind of get that, sometimes one question on an email leads to 4, leads to 8, and then the process just gets a little bit easier if you came in. My questions about the budget are satisfied at this point. I am waiting on some more weeks to come in. We have some insurance meetings we're going to take place in. We have some requests from a constitutional officer that wants to speak individually. I'm sure that's what they want to talk about. So I think that for us to start setting another budget meeting right now, let's let this process work out. That's this commissioner's, we don't have to do anything until September. We've already set the millage rate. We can't go any higher. We're not going to go any higher. We've set the MSBU fees. We've sent the solid waste assessment. So a lot of things we've already done that has solidified our budget as we stand right now. And I'm pretty satisfied in watching and participating in this budget and letting it play out a little longer in the month until we get all the information. And then Ms. Young will bring us those recommendations as our Deputy County Administrator and our budget analysis person. Mr. Adamczyk, you have the floor, sir.
I think that's great that we had that earlier meeting, and I appreciated that meeting when we had it. The difference between that and what should be happening, in my opinion, is we had that meeting, the staff outlined what their desires were, what their needs were, and they all expressed wholeheartedly that it was needs, it wasn't just wants. We have no reconciliation of the number of the budget that we were given and what one of those needs were left off, what needs are included, what details are there, and that hasn't been shared publicly, that's not on public record, that's not in a form that anyone can see outside of this, that's not transparency. I personally am starting to believe this is one of the least transparent groups I've ever worked with. So to me, we're doing everything we do is in the name of not being transparent because we want to do it in meetings and in rooms and in people's offices. We don't want to do it via email, which becomes public record. We don't want to do it via meeting. We don't want to do it via workshop. We want to stifle conversation here on the dais of commissioners. We want to stifle the conversation with our citizens. We don't want to meet in evening meetings. We don't want to meet when it's convenient for our public. It's maddening and it's offensive. So you may be offended by the fact that we had one meeting. I'm offended by the fact that we haven't had 6.
Any other comments on the budget? Mr. Turner?
Thought we were doing commissioner comments.
Well, we are, but Mr. Adamczyk wanted to discuss the budget meeting.
Well, he did.
He did. Mr. Rawls, real quick,
Are we going to speak about this, or?
please.
Okay.
go.
So, when I first got elected, I requested a breakdown of the contracts that we have with start dates and end dates. I've yet to get that. At the last meeting, I shared that it appears to me there's a $4 million bust on what we provided. No one else picked up on that. I've not received an answer to that 2 weeks later. I think that we need to hire a budget manager that focuses on nothing but budget, not having one person that wears 3 or 4 hats. I don't think that we have done the citizens right by presenting the budget we've presented. These are my personal opinions, but when I tell people that what I was given on the budget was just one page of numbers with $198 million on the bottom of it. And then when I got the breakdown, it's around 2,300 lines of breakdown, but those numbers don't jive, and even the revenues and expenditures don't jive. There's a problem. And it's our responsibility, not staff's responsibility. We can't blame this on them. This is our responsibility. We can't abdicate our responsibility. But we just throw something at the wall, and, you know, the constitutional officers are not thrilled with the process either, by the way. And I think that we need to be meeting with the constitutional officers, giving them more time to explain their budgetary needs, taking a look at the total budget, look at all the resources of funding, take a look at our reserves as well. Take a look at our capital, our CIP, and see where we're going to be spending our capital on capital improvements. But I've been here for 2.5 years. We haven't done that. It's, here's the budget. This is what's thrown out there. I call department heads up, like you suggest. Do you like what you got? Well, no. Can you manage your day-to-day affairs and get your mission accomplished? No. But we'll work with what we've got. That's what I'm so tired of hearing. We'll make do with what we've got. We'll go put out the fires as need be. I've had 2 emails this morning, complaints from citizens not being able to get calls returned because we're understaffed, not being able to get the ditches cleaned because we don't have enough equipment. You just said, y'all need to talk to Mr. Hutchinson and Mr. Grimes. I hope you're not thinking I don't. You know, I have my ear to the ground. I called Chad Hutchinson a couple of weeks ago, and I said, what's going on? I heard the pains. I heard the concerns. I knew probably before anybody in here what was going on. But the fact is we're not doing anything meaningful to moving towards an end to help the people that we're sitting here lauding and saying these guys are really getting hammered in the field. And we're part of that hammering. We're part of that pain that we bring on them. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Mr. Amzak, any further comments on your commissioner comments?
No, I'm all set for now.
Thank you. Mr. Rawls, you have the floor, sir.
All right. So I've brought this up several times in the past. I think that part of the budget that we just passed included the extension of a contract that's over 25 years old, and the extension of another contract that's over 22 years old. These contracts were with the Putnam County Chamber of Commerce. I think part of the problem that we have is that we don't really take our economic development and tourist development seriously. We just keep recycling the same old, and then blaming it on, well, it's COVID, or we didn't have time. You know, we have another contract out there for fuel that we've had twice come up at the very tail end, and the contract isn't put back out for bids, and 2 times after it was extended, we had the same thing happen. But I think that we have a problem with the Chamber of Commerce. You know, I was really upset the other day when I saw the chamber putting themselves above the citizens. They're marketing their company. They're using our tax dollars to market themselves. And in a feel-good moment, which doesn't feel good to me when I ask basic questions on what they should have under control by now, since they've had 22 plus years of economic development and 25 plus years of tourist development, and they can't answer basic questions. I think it's time that we bring tourist development and economic development in-house, that we hire a tourist development specialist that we manage ourselves, that we bring in economic development in-house. Let the chamber focus on what they should be focusing on, which is small business support, retention, any kind of help towards small business, but not focusing on tourist development, economic development, because to me, it just doesn't seem like we're getting a lot of value for our money. You know, we're spending $130,000 to bring in the Bassmaster Elite. Anybody can write a check to them for $130,000, and they keep a large portion of it, and the rest of it goes to local companies. You know, but we don't have access to their records because they're a quote-unquote private company. So whatever they spend their money on, they're allowed to, even though it's our tax dollars. And that just doesn't sit well with me. I know we have 2 members of the board that are members of the chamber. I think it's a conflict of interest. It's probably an ethics violation if you go far enough, because I think that if we stop funding the Chamber of Commerce, excuse me, what?
Let's be careful about.
I'm explaining. Let me explain this. Then let me explain this. So
I've heard.
We have.
All I'm asking you to do is watch the words you're using.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Finish your comment.
We have 2 seated members of the board who are members of the Chamber of Commerce through their own private companies. if they were to maintain their membership and there was no tax dollars going to the chamber, for the chamber to be able to maintain the staff that they have right now, they would have to probably quadruple their membership fees. So there's a direct economic benefit to the members of the board that are members of the chamber because they don't have to pay that high amount. They get to pay a lower amount because the taxpayers are covering costs for them. You know, we're paying for their lawn service, their cleaning service, their telephone service, their internet service. We pay for everything, and we shouldn't be paying all that. To be honest with you, that should be 100% their responsibility. But again, these contracts have not been renegotiated. And if I had that spreadsheet that I've asked for with start dates and end dates, I could probably look at more contracts that go out that far. And I think that for me, it's very unsettling. In talking with our attorney, he says that it's not prudent for us to have contracts that go out that far. I think that it's high time that we start having this conversation regarding that. ARPA funding. I am beside myself when I hear us talking about, you know, we're focusing right now on maybe looking at doing some infrastructure stuff. I think we need to start having the conversation like Commissioner Adams talked about, substance abuse, mental health. We've got a domestic violence shelter in town that has had to pick up a lot, has a huge amount of increase in the need because of COVID. Small business owners that are landlords, that are mortgage holders, or banks. Off the top of your head, do we have any foreclosures or evictions, Matt, right now in the system?
Well, those are always continuing. I mean, that's just a normal course of business. But there's a large backlog of them due to CDC guidelines on evictions, yeah. Mm-hmm.
If we don't look at focusing some of this ARPA money on getting those resolved, we could have citizens that are homeless. We could extend our homeless problem, which will extend the other services that I was just describing. We had the young lady in here from Epicure. I've spoken to several other nonprofits as well. I think we need to focus this money on our citizens, getting the money out there to the extent that we can, as much of it as we can, and then take a look at what's left and see where we can best spend that money on things like Commissioner Adams talked about, maybe water extension over in East Palatka or some other infrastructure projects, maybe looking at picking up that property out there at the barge port, whether it's to the BOCC or through the Port Authority. I sent an email to Mr. Suggs a few weeks ago requesting an update on the Veterans Memorial Ordinance. I've not heard anything back. It's not been, we've now in our second meeting, it's not been on there. I'm having people email me and ask me what's going on, so I'd like an update on that. And then calls not being returned. I know you guys are overworked in Public Works, but you know they're just lately it seems like I'm getting a lot of complaints from different people saying, I've spoken to Mike, not sure which one. You know, I know we have 3 mics there. They were supposed to come out, never did, or never got my call returned. I really think that we need to be pushing hard to try to engage our citizen as much as possible. If nothing else, forward me the complaint, and I'll call them up personally and at least act as a conduit in the meantime. But I don't like getting the email saying, here's a complaint from a citizen because they're 2 months down the road and they're upset. That's all I got.
Thank you. We're going to address the veteran in just a second, the Veterans Memorial. Mr. Pickens, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Harvey. Just want to make a comment. As everybody knew, Representative Payne and I held a meeting on the biosolids a couple of weeks ago, and I truly appreciate Bobby coming down with his expertise in the water bill that he passed and explaining about biosolids and the application process. Then we had a question and answer period. It lasted almost 2 hours. I want to thank South Putnam Church for allowing us to have it at that facility. I want to thank Commissioner Adams for attending. He was very helpful. And so I think it did a lot of good. I had somebody stop me the other day after a funeral I was at who attended and was very appreciative of us coming down and having those discussions. So on the on the ARPA funding, are we just to get with Sam with our recommendations, or we're going to have some type of workshop meeting on that to discuss how we're going to move forward this and what kind of timeframes we have?
Yes, sir.
I may have missed something, but I, just want to update there.
You haven't missed anything, Mr. Chairman Pickens. Mr. Sullivan sent out an email to not only the commissioners, but also to the department heads about requests for funding opportunities through ARPA. What he's doing is he's looking at the 4 to 5 categories that he knows is available for us to start kind of grouping those things. And I believe it was last discussed here at the board that possibly of scheduling workshops, town halls, whatever it was, in the near future to discuss this with our citizens and bring it to Putnam County. So what he's doing is just trying to compile a list of thoughts and ideas from each one of the commissioners as well as his department heads.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I'll just go ahead and say I'm one of the commissioners that have 2 businesses that are members pay dues to the chamber, and I fully support their efforts. So I just want to get that on record. And I have so for probably 30 years, and will continue to do so. The last thing I have, and the only reason I'm mentioning this because I've got everybody in the room, but I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But Colonel Wells is here, and then Mike Troxel and Jay with sanitation. Colonel, I knew we used to have an agricultural sheriff that I could turn in complaints about illegal dumping and stuff. I'm sure everybody in their districts are having this. It seems like it's rampant in South Putnam. So I didn't know if he had a new contact. I know Donnie Jordan was the agricultural sheriff who I could call, and I've had 2 or 3 complaints about mattresses and couches just dumped on the side of the road. So Jay, I didn't know, I've mentioned this to you a little bit. We don't have the prisoner crews, but I didn't know if y'all still had an inmate crew. Just I'm looking for direction for a commissioner of what to tell these citizens or what to try to do.
Sure, I'll give you an update on our end, and then with Jay. Jay, I believe we still do have the inmate work crew, that is part of their responsibility to respond to those locations and clean up throughout the county. We have selected our next agricultural natural resources deputy. It's Deputy Sarah Warnick. However, I'm still about 11 or 12 down in the law enforcement side, waiting for the new crew to get out of training after some recent turnover, and then still dealing with COVID. I would expect to probably have her full-time in that position if I don't get struck any worse with COVID in probably the next 60 to 90 days. Our priority has been to put the full-time deputy sheriffs in the city of Crescent City, which will wrap up in about the next 20 days. They'll be fully staffed, and then natural resources, agriculture is right after that. In the meantime, please feel free to send those to me. I can assign them out to the district commanders and have them assign it out wherever it needs to be. We'll definitely deal with it. We still have the inmate work crew. I just don't have the luxury of having the full-time ag deputy. But if we continue to move forward to make the progress we are, next 60 to 90 days, we should have a full-time person back for you.
Okay,
Yes,
all
sir.
right, thank you, Joe. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Pickens. Mr. Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you didn't forget me this week.
I was just thinking you were going to say that.
I was also going to speak of ARCA funding, and I'm in favor, once you get the information where we can have an informed workshop. I'd sure like to have one too on the ARCA funding. I'd like for it to go on record. I'm also one of the members that's a proudly a member of the Chamber of Commerce, because I think they do good work. And I could use this soapbox up here to talk about a commissioner's disdain for the chamber, or the comments that were made to the incoming chairman that he's going to go after him this year and that he needs to look out and those sort of things. But I'm not going to justify it, so I'm going to pass that. And Mr. Chairman, with that being said, the last thing I'd like to end up with is that I understand that we're having some issues this year with weather, and I understand that we're having some issues with some equipment and with members of Public Works not being there. But I'm going to challenge Public Works between now and, I know it's not over yet this year, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. We've lost on the mowing this year. We've lost. So I would like to try to come up with some kind of a plan between now and the spring to do something different. we had made some comments earlier on this past spring or before spring about possibly breaking up some of the areas and the smaller streets and whatever and putting them out and letting the mowing director, letting these guys with 2 mowers and a pickup truck go out and mow those streets, you know, but it would take them something underneath the mowing director type deal. So, and I'm not trying to be critical. I understand we've had all the rain that we've had, and the kids' roofing business isn't much better. They get to work, it seems like, about 20 hours a week, you know, because of the rain. So it's the same way when it gets a certain wet or it gets too wet, the tractor's just bogged down. They can't go in there and mow it. So I get all that. So I guess I want to challenge Public Works in between now and the spring to try to come up with some program changes of some kind to maybe do some of these things we've talked about previously on the smaller streets, and to try to bring some private in to help, and, you know, to do some things to where maybe we're not so critical as we are this year. And it was fairly bad the last several years, but, and it's not just because it's in-house, because it got so bad that one year they had to fire everybody twice that was outside in the public that they tried to get brought in to do it. So I guess that's the gist of that conversation. I'd really like to challenge staff and to try to come up with some kind of a change in the mowing, the way we do it, instead of just figuring that by the middle of August we're going to lose it every year, but we'll catch up by October, and that's our plan. Maybe we could do a little better by trying to come up with some changes. I don't think it's impossible. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have today.
Thank you. And I think they are working on Mr. Suggs and Mr. Troxel are working diligently. I even went out and mowed places in front of my house to see how long it would take me on a certain depth with a certain mower, and gave that information to Mr. Suggs on Monday morning. So they are they've got to look at it. I mean, grass is pretty high around the county, but every day we're getting some rain and lots of sunshine too. And my Lord, that grass is jumping out of the ground right now. My comments are simple. Commissioners, when do you want to have your next the Veterans Memorial Ordinance reading? I have a question for Rich on that. Rich, how many readings do we have to have? I know that you sat there the last time and did kind of a mock-up of a new one, but when do we really need to, how many meetings do we need to have?
You need 2. It's an ordinance, and because it's an ordinance, you need 2 readings, and so far it was just workshopped, so the changes that came out of the workshop make its way into the ordinance that'll be read.
Okay. The problem is I don't want to bring this back to a workshop if we're going to have the disruptions that we had the last time, because we do try to take care of business at that workshop, and so that's my point there. So you would recommend maybe 2 in September? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
It's at the board's discretion, but you just have to have 2 regular meetings to read it.
Okay, so that's Mr. Pickens, I guess you were first on the light?
Yeah, the changes that came out of the workshop, you've incorporated those?
Yes, sir.
Can you send me an email of that copy? If you did, can you send me another one? Or somebody find it for me in all my files, but I'd like to, because that's what I thought we were waiting on is that, so I'm sorry I missed that. So, and, you know, something like this probably should not be done like we did it last time. That wouldn't get for anybody.
Mr. Turner?
I didn't hear the last thing Commissioner Pickens said.
We went about it last time with trying to put it in on a regular workshop or transportation meeting. It doesn't need to be done that way.
No, it's too much.
It was too much.
It was.
Okay, yes, Mr. Chairman, I thought that the way this worked, and maybe I missed something along the way in the last few years, I thought we took something to workshop and we worked on it in the workshop until it got voted out of workshop, and then it went on the agenda.
Correct.
I don't recall this ever being voted out of workshop.
Yeah.
We heard it, we talked about it, but there was no vote, there was not even a hand consensus on it coming out of workshop. So, you know, I don't know that it's time to put it on the board until the board votes to put it on the agenda, or move it out of workshop and place it on the agenda.
Well, that's the question on the table. Do we want to put it on the workshop, an upcoming workshop? And that's up to this board to decide with the revised changes that Mr. Commando has made.
I don't, I guess I just don't quite understand what the current status quo was wrong with the current status quo. I haven't heard of anything being destroyed lately. I saw in the paper this morning where a sign was hung on it, but it came off and didn't do any damage to it. So, and there's a state ordinance that protects different things. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess I just get a little tired of the commissioners sometimes just trying to give themselves self-sustained pain, or just do something in order just to do it when it's not going to make any difference. So you just, I don't know. Whatever the commission wants to do is fine with me.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Ross? I'll let you.
We actually did vote on this, and why it came to the workshop was beyond me, but I'll make a motion that we go ahead and move this to a
We're not
reading?
going, I don't want to entertain a motion without Commissioner Pickens having an opportunity to read the revised ordinance as it was sent out. So
Okay.
could we wait on that until we at least then decide if we're going to take it back to a workshop?
I'd like to hear the motion, personally.
Is the
Are
motion
you
in
done
order?
with the floor? You have a motion?
Is the motion in order?
I
I don't
think,
see how we can vote on, take a motion on something that we don't know that's in there. I'm not going to vote on something I don't know what's in there.
I don't know what the motion was.
Yes or no question, is a motion in order?
I don't think it's in order.
Okay, thank you.
Rich, is the commissioner allowed to make a motion right now?
Commissioners are allowed to make motions whenever they want.
Okay.
This-
So I think that's in order. This commissioner's opinion?
Mr. Adams, I can't hear you today, I'm sorry.
This commissioner's opinion is that would be in order because he has the right to make a motion.
He can make a motion, but
We haven't heard what the motion is to say whether or not it's appropriate.
is that your?
I feel you're jumping the gun a little bit with not hearing what he's going to say.
I haven't heard anything being said.
Okay.
Mr. Adams, you have the floor.
Well, I'm all set.
So,
Next issue.
okay, next issue, census will be out on the 12th. The numbers will be coming in this coming week, and we'll be looking at hopefully, we'll be looking at correct numbers, because if they come back really inflated, we have some other workshops to do, trust me on that matter. All right, so we're done with Commissioner Mr. Adams?
So are we going to have a workshop? What do we decide on the ordinance? We had this whole conversation. We didn't say, are we going to do it in a workshop with other items? Are we doing a standalone workshop to move it forward, like Commissioner
Well,
Turner said?
I believe what we need to do is get a copy of the ordinance as amended, and then we'll take it to a workshop. If the board decides to take it to a workshop, that'll be something that we need to decide as a whole. And then when we hear it in workshop, then we can bring it out of workshop to a regular meeting.
Wouldn't that discussion happen in the workshop? Like, if we all have it in our email today, we put it on a workshop next week, we should have ample time to look at. The document didn't change that much.
What's such a hurry about?
It's up to the board at that point.
And to be clear, I just want to add something, what I meant to when I lit my light, but I got distracted by the interruption to Commissioner Rawls, who had, in my belief, every right to make whatever motion he wants. But what I wanted to say is I don't believe that this ordinance is about a statue. I believe it's about all monuments, and that's why it is important. It's about all things recognizing citizens, veterans, and other people that deserve recognition, including Mr. Asa, throughout this county. including our signage and like, I think it says in their street names and other things. I mean, that's important. That's the reason why it came up is because our citizens asked us for it to come up. So that's why it's important. Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Admet. Mr. Rawls, you have the floor.
Just want to say that we resent this ordinance a month ago, a little over a month ago. Just wanted to put that out there. This isn't it's something that's new. It was revised at the workshop, and we received it that afternoon.
Mr. Commander, will you make sure everybody gets a copy of the revised ordinance?
He's already sent it.
Okay, thank you. And then, seeing nothing else, that'll end commissioner comments. Let's go to public comment on miscellaneous items. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to us on miscellaneous? Ms. Ashley just brought me a blue card, and we'll take those. Mr. Tim Hoteling. Mr. Hoteling, you know the drill. This is your portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens, you, an opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. It is not reasonable to expect the board will engage or debate or deliberations on matter which the board has received no prior information. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Hoteling.
Tim Hoteling, San Mateo. This is just basically bringing you all up to speed because I've spoken to each of you on my concerns about the procurement process and the documents that are retained by the procurement office. There's a whole bunch of backstory to it in terms of the ability to get records. And I just wanted to make it clear that in a specific instance, there were multiple purchases on a P card, which I'm not addressing, but there were a bunch of purchases totaling $12,700. It was associated with the operation of the Emergency Operations Center during the primarily the beginning parts of the pandemic. There was a legitimate management decision made to make an approach of remedying a need, which you can get into he said, she said, whatever. But the bottom line being, I've spent now almost a year and a half just trying to get a simple question asked every time, well, in these days gone by, when we'd write a check, we'd enter it into a ledger and we'd make a note so we'd know what it was that was spent. In this specific instance, what I've passed out to you is an email that says that the procurement folk have no records of this $12,700. There's also a copy of an email from Miss Susan Frank, who knows everything about everything as far as I'm concerned, where she even had to go back and research how things are done and send me an email which was just a refinement. There are portions of ordinances that you all wrote, including one that says the county shall maintain records sufficient to detail the history of procurement. These records will include, but are not necessarily limited to the following: a rationale for the method of procurement, the selection of contract type, the contractor selection or rejection, and the basis of the contract price. Y'all have sent letters to Tallahassee explaining how you're putting down the public purpose for each and everything that you spend. And there are no records. Closing out. Sole source record, you build a form, there's no form. General vendor insurance requirements with workman's comp and all of that, that's also a form, there's no form. Putnam County vendor application form. All of those are things that I would assume normal business management procedure is that you're going to have some record keeping.
Thank you, Mr. Hoteling.
We went to your auditors, I'm sorry, Larry.
What time?
We went to your auditors with the specifics so I could keep it private without having to go whatever, and I've spoken to all of you. And I'm trying just to keep it at the very core issue. But your auditors should have asked these same questions, and they didn't. And they didn't feel it worthy of bringing it to your attention. In my mind, y'all have, it's your unfortunate management responsibility, and I think you need to review that.
Thank you, Mr. Hotelan.
I got, if I could real quick.
Mr. Rawls?
Let me get my light. Did you, didn't you tell me that you went to the Human Resources Director prior to her
I did.
exit? And started a fraud investigation?
I've brought this up in probably 3 or 4 different venues.
Was there ever a conclusion to that, or?
I've never received anything in writing. I've never received anything other than being told that it was an emergency, so it was okay. When in fact, y'all tell Tallahassee and y'all got chastised at each and every record. As soon as you're done doing an emergency thing, okay, fine. As soon as you have a moment, you're supposed to be able to write down what you did and why you did it, and why it's in the benefit of the public. And I'm not trying to cast stones or anything. It's just there are no records. And the bottom line being, if you got $12,700 and there's no records, how many other $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 that you don't require any reporting whatsoever are not there? And I'm not making any,
but
you're right, I'm just, to me, that's the question, the elephant in the room and that sort of thing. So
I think
that's why I'm
maybe,
being a pain in the butt.
I think
about it.
we should set this aside as a discussion topic for a workshop to discuss policies and procedures of the board. And maybe be able to head off something like this in the future. You know, it's happened, there's nothing we can do about it, but we can definitely stop it from happening again in the future. So
Well-
I'd like to see this as a topic on a workshop. And maybe even have a special workshop on it. You know, there's 4 Tuesdays in every month. I'm willing to dedicate myself to every one of them, or just 5 days a week.
And you have to forgive me,
Mr. Hotelan?
I've watched my wife
Hotelan?
that lived.
That's
two-
Mr. Rawls's point.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna move on. Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
Yes, I think that needs to be noted here that the reason all these inaccuracies and the whatever, or the, you know, whatever they come up with, the reason they weren't brought out, because the auditor found no merit. That keeps being lost in this. The auditor found no merit. Yeah, I mean, I told you this when? Tuesday,
Yes, sir.
Thursday
We had
last
a
week?
long-
The auditor found no merit. That means no merit. That doesn't mean that there's fraud there. If there was fraud, we don't control the auditor. They don't control the auditor. There's no merit. So you can keep bringing it up, Mr. Tim. You can keep bringing it up. You can keep making innuendos. You can keep make out like something's there that's not. I'm just telling you right now, when you turned it in and accused of fraud and whatever, there was no merit found to the complaint. No merit.
Did I use the word fraud? You used the word fraud.
He did,
Yes, sir. It was-
concerning what you said.
Yes, sir.
He did concerning what you did. He did down there.
The topic of my conversation that I waited a long time today was records. There are no records.
Okay, Mr. Rawls, you have the floor.
So just to make everything perfectly clear, the auditor did not say it didn't have merit. What he said was they were only looking at the beans, dollars in, dollars out. They didn't look at anything specific to that. Regarding the fraud, Mr. Hotelan came to me, and I told him we had a fraud prevention policy since some of the stuff that we were talking about was the P cards. I had a concern as well as him, and I said, why don't you go talk to the Human Resources Director? We went across the street and spoke to the Human Resources Director. I was told that there would be a fraud investigation started because it fell under the fraud prevention policy that this board put into place a couple of years ago.
May I ask
This
a
is
question?
this is where this is the nexus of what we're talking about.
Mr. Rawls, may I ask a
Yes,
question?
absolutely.
You went across the street
We were meeting at my office.
You took our HR director to your office
No.
across the street?
No,
Okay.
he and I were in my private office.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make.
So anyways, he had follow-up with her. Where that went, I don't know. It's our responsibility as commissioners and as employees of the county to bring anything like that to HR, since they are the first step in the fraud policy. He did what our fraud policy required. That was the reason why I asked if he ever heard anything. I never heard anything, and I haven't done any follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
So, I mean, can't we put this to rest? What documents are required for this type of expenditure? Are those documents you showed us required, or are they not?
Not during an emergency situation, they're not. State of
Can someone
emergency.
answer that question that's not a commissioner, please?
I haven't seen what he's provided to you. We have provided to him all documentation.
No, so like he provided a vendor form,
Mr. Adams, let her finish, please.
but she's already not answering the
You want
question.
to argue with it. You don't want the answer, you want a grandstand campaign and
All right,
argue.
Mr.
Sure, I
Turner.
do. You're
I
right.
got-
My apologies,
That's
Mr.
fine.
Chairman.
Ms. Young, go ahead and answer the question.
Mr. Hotelling has not produced anything to me, so I do not know what forms he's produced to you. However, Mr. Hotelling has made numerous requests, and we have responded to each of them and provided him the documentation for which was required to initiate the purchase, as well as the documentation for which would have been required by the clerk's office to process a check. All documentation has been provided.
So let me ask a different question, I guess. Do we require, if we're hiring a catering company, to verify that they have a health permit to operate?
We hired a short order cook. We didn't hire catering, so they would not need a license. That's under a different provision. They would have filled out a vendor packet, and that has been provided.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
I have another question. Now I'm hearing new information. Do I have the floor?
You do. I
Okay.
called upon you, sir.
As I said before, I think we do need to have a special workshop regarding this. So we hired a short order cook. I was told by staff that the breakfasts that were being put out at the EOC in the form of continental breakfast, coffee and all that was actually done by our in-house staff, not by a short order cook. The documents that Mr. Hotelling has provided me show that we had 1 to 2 people a day working in there at, I guess, $2,500 a week fee. I don't want to get in the details of it right now. I think this merits having a discussion. One of the other things that was brought up was the fact that we're paying senior staff overtime during the event, whatever the event was. I couldn't wrap my head around this. I did have a meeting with Mr. Suggs and with Julianne early on. I want to say it was around April or May, probably May of last year, and I had concerns because a constituent came to me with documents that showed that we were paying overtime, and my question was, why are we paying overtime to senior staff? And the answer was, well, it's allowed. Then Mr. Hotelling brought me a contract from Mr. Suggs saying he's not allowed to get overtime. And that was also one of the things that he turned over to the Human Resources Director. So, I think we could do one of two things. We can ignore what Mr. Hotelling has brought to us, and we'll just continue to do business where we are. Or we can have a meeting amongst ourselves and discuss the policies and procedures of the board. How things right now we have in front of us a citizen from the public. We're also citizens from the public. We represent the public's best interest. I think we at least owe it to the citizens to deliberate this and take a look at what happened. So in the future, we're not going to unring the bell, but in the future, we can lay out policies and procedures and see who's going to make decisions. I don't know why we were feeding. I was told we were feeding people because we didn't want COVID to come in the building, and yet you're going to leave the building to go grocery shopping and bring groceries in. And at the time, the news was saying, be careful handling plastic bags because COVID lives on it for up to 72 hours. Just all these conflicting statements were coming back. So I think we owe it to the public to have a conversation about it. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
So when we hire short order cooks, do we hire them as individuals? Do we give them a 1099? How do they get paid?
They're employees.
Okay.
commissioner, we can hire a short order cook under any vendor, just like anyone else. You can be a sole proprietor and be paid under your name. If you have an entity, we can pay you under the entity.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Attell. And anybody
I got-
else?
well,
No,
one-
we're going to move on.
one more
please.
question
We'll
if I
do
could.
it at a workshop, okay? Thank you.
So when are we gonna have that workshop?
We'll get,
Yeah, one day, that's, the answer seems to be all the time. We're gonna have workshops one day.
Adam Zach, you're out of order, sir. Thank you.
That's fine, thank you.
I'm done.
No, I'd like to have a workshop
Is there-
about something that we talked about having a workshop about someday.
This is
Someday,
taking
just like you
away
said.
from the citizens' time to speak.
You have no more
Okay?
citizens.
So, Mr. Hotelan, thank you for
just-
bringing that to our attention. Is there any other citizens that would like to speak today? Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Recess till 5:05.